You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the second Doctor story, The Krotons. Krotons? Krotons. Now I've messed myself up. So I will say it in various ways, but I will try to say it, The Krotons. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Just remember it rhymes with croutons.
Okay, the Krotons. And Father Cory Sticha. Sorry. Hey, Father Cory.
I'm just staying out of this. Hello.
Folks, we would really appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts and write a review for the show, or any other place where you can review podcasts. We really do appreciate that, and it does really help a lot. What also helps a lot is if you share the podcast with your friends and help us grow this community and reach more listeners. We do have some listener feedback at the end of the episode, and I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Star Trek, where you can see us talk about Star Trek instead of Doctor Who, and you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Star Trek. So we are talking about the Krotons, and Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, the second Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe land in the first ever story by Robert Holmes, and it's surprisingly dark, tense, and unnerving all the way through. They're on a planet inhabited by a human culture known as the Gons, and for thousands of years, the Gons have periodically selected two of their best students and sent them to become companions of an unseen crystalline race known as the Krotons. Only, unbeknownst to the Gons, the young people aren't really going to be companions. As soon as they go into the machine where the Krotons allegedly live, they come out the other side and are vaporized. The Doctor and companions arrive too late to save one such student, but they save the other, a girl named Vanna. And they let the Gons know what's really happening to the young people they send to be companions. When the Gons learn that the Krotons aren't actually their friends and benefactors, it sets off a revolution in their society right in part one of the story. The Gons are all for rebelling against the Krotons, but the only knowledge they have came from the Krotons, and the Krotons haven't told them that much, so they have no effective weapons to use against them. Some hot-headed Gons want to attack the Krotons immediately anyway, while other wiser Gons want to wait until they can develop effective weapons and tactics. It turns out that the Krotons need highly intelligent people, or high brains, to provide them with mental energy, which is why they've been taking the most intelligent Gon students. But the Doctor and Zoe are high brains who are off the charts, so the Krotons really want them. The Doctor determines that the Krotons and their ship are largely made of tellurium, which dissolves in sulfuric acid, so he teaches a Gon scientist how to make this, and in the end they use the sulfuric acid to poison the Krotons and melt their ship, saving the day and allowing the Gons to rebuild their civilization. The end.
All right. Father Cory, what do you think of this one?
This is the first time I'd seen this one. You know, I'd seen a lot of the second Doctor, but I hadn't seen this one before, and I really enjoyed it. This is a good story. It was, as you could tell by Jimmy's summary, there was quite a bit going on. It moved really well. There wasn't a lot of standing around twiddling thumbs like sometimes you see, especially this era of Classic Who. Yeah, it was a really, really enjoyable story. Good characters and everything. I really liked it. Of course, it's Robert Holmes, who became known after this as one of the better, if not the best, of Classic Who writers. So yeah, this was great.
Yeah, good for a start. How about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, this is a tight, dramatic story. It's much darker than usual. It's quite fast-moving with not a lot of running around, and with early plot developments, like setting off the revolution in part 1 instead of part 3 or 4. It's interestingly creepy and tense. It's frightening, uncanny, and unnerving. I think the weak spot of the story is the Krotons themselves physically. When we see them, they look like robots, and they're supposed to be crystalline, but they look like robots, and they have these prism-shaped heads that even rotate sometimes. And they're not the best physical design, but if you partition the physical design and just look at it in story terms and human character terms, it's really a good story. Also, I'd mentioned that I recently listened to A Big Finish featuring the Krotons, which focuses on River Song and Jackie Tyler.
Oh, fun.
And so they have Alex Kingston and Camille Codry reprising their roles as River and Jackie, and it takes a lot of the same concepts and even repeats some of the same kinds of scenes from the original story. Only now we're seeing it with new characters, and it's an interesting story. And Jackie Tyler's obsessive knowledge of 20th century pop culture saves the day.
That's awesome. That's good. That's good. I was wondering if they, because clearly River would be a high brain, but Jackie probably not. But nevertheless, yeah, that's fun.
She's a high brain when it comes to knowledge of 21st century reality TV shows.
There you go.
That's good. So as for me, I'm in the same boat with you guys. I really enjoyed this one, and I really like the plotting. I like the characterization of the Doctor. The second Doctor is just always so. He's not. I am the Time Lord victorious. I mean, he's the opposite of that, really, and there were times when he is afraid or unsure, and that's a real interesting character trait to play out in our hero character. I think the Krotons came across to me like a bit of a cross between Daleks and Cybermen. Mm-hmm. They had characteristics of both, but the whole robot danger sort of thing, they just didn't feel menacing enough to me in that sense. So I agree with you in the physical sense that they were not great. I did have a note that it reminded me a little bit of Signs, where if you're an alien invading another planet, you could pick a better one than one where the sulfur in the atmosphere apparently all around could create sulfuric acid, which dissolves you. Like the aliens in Signs were, harmed by water, and you come to a planet with 70% water. Bad idea. So there was a little of that, but interesting premise. The idea of the two have to be chosen as a kind of tribute. Our two finest, and they're almost like offered up as sacrifices to the gods in a sense.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah. Interesting that what they were doing is, it wasn't, at first I thought we're absorbing mental energy, and we're just, raising up the best of each generation to absorb their mental energy. But it was actually, they're trying to evolve the Gons to be smarter. Mm-hmm. And yet, because they don't want them to be too smart and rebel, get the means by which they can fight back, they're kind of hampering themselves. And it's only when you have these third-party elements introduced into the system that they actually can get what they want. So I thought that was an interesting tension within the story, that the Krotons were undermining themselves with the way they were handling things.
It's also evolutionarily unsound. If you want to breed a population for intelligence, you don't take the most intelligent ones and vaporize them. You take the most intelligent ones and let them be the ones to have babies.
Right. It was kind of weird because they were vaporizing them because nope, not yet. Nope, we're not quite there yet. I think that was the idea, was they were vaporizing because they weren't quite at the level they needed.
Yeah, they were testing them, and you would think, okay, they're not ready, so send them back. But no, we got to get rid of them. And that was kind of a weak spot in there, where it's like, because they'd be worn out. I mean, you could tell they were drained, but you'd think that could come back eventually. Their energy could come back,
and it does with Vanna. Yeah.
What you want to do is I mean, this is completely immoral, but what you would want to do is kill all the ones who are low brains and let the high brains breed, and also introduce some radiation to promote, or something mutagenic to cause mutations that may prompt the development of additional intelligence genes.
Mm-hmm. So,
which actually is sort of what we've been doing to ourselves. Human intelligence has risen dramatically over the last several thousand years because of the intrahuman arms race and the complexity of our culture. So we've bred ourselves, domesticated ourselves. We've bred ourselves to be both smarter and more cooperative than our ancestors were, which is why we have a global spanning civilization now.
Interesting. So the there are a lot of Gond characters, the people that the Krotons have enslaved. So we have the two companions, the one who dies, so I don't remember his name.
His name was Abu.
Abu, right. The great Abu. Never mind. And Varna, who is the female companion, and her boyfriend, paramour, Thara, and his father is Selris, and Selris is the leader of the Gonds, and he leads this ceremony by which the two are chosen and sent in. And Thara he's a rebel right off the bat. He's opposed to this because he's like, stop. We need to stop doing this. She's going to go in. I'm never going to see her again. I mean, and he's obviously doing this entirely because of his feelings for Vanna.
Yeah. Take away his girlfriend. He's obviously going to rebel against that idea.
Yeah. And so, but Selris is like, resign. No, this is what we have to do. This is the Krotons' law. Word is law. And then you have Elek, who is Selris' political rival.
He's a rebel leader, yeah. And
eventually.
He just wants to, well, by episode 2, he's all for attacking the Krotons right now.
Right. Although in these early scenes, he's like all for, we need to obey the Krotons. We have no choice. This is what must be done. Be quiet, Thara, and this is this has to happen.
He seems like he's contrarian for the sake of being contrary.
Right.
Through a lot of this.
Well, and by the end, he's willing to start obeying the Krotons again because they offer a deal. You hand over the Doctor and Zoe, and we'll let the rest of you go free. And he's like, oh, okay.
Well, and he actually says he's basically looking out for himself. I mean, or he doesn't say it, but I think I can't remember if it was Doctor or one of the others that says that he's looking out for himself. He doesn't care about the Gonds. He doesn't care about the Krotons. He's just whatever helps him survive. That's all he cares about. And that's a good characterization. By the way, he was played by Philip Maddock, who we'll see 2 stories later as the warlord in the War Games.
Yeah, one of the first members of the Doctor's people that we ever meet. Second after the meddling monk.
Yep.
Right. Okay, that's interesting.
One of the things that I noticed about this story is there are elements in it that normally would be played for comedy that are played for drama here. And I think that's part of, I think some of it may be Robert Holmes's native tendency to dark comedy, but other parts of it look like acting or directing choices. For example, at one point, something happens and one of the second Doctor's catchphrases is, "Oh my giddy aunt." And normally that's kind of more in a comedic way. But here it's like he does it as a drama line. It's like, "Oh my giddy aunt," and he's just horrified by what he's just seen.
Yeah, there is it is less light, like the second Doctor often is. There's no flute playing here, there's none of that.
He also slaps Zoe at one point because she's like under the influence of the machine that's been testing her brain. One of the things that the Krotons do when you plug into one of their machines that analyzes your brain is it makes you have positive feelings about the Krotons. And so after Zoe has been brain tested, which she did to herself, she just randomly, let's see what this thing is, and plugs herself in. For such a
smart person, that was done.
Yeah. But after she's thinking all positive about the Krotons, and the Doctor like slaps her out of it. But that's still, for the second Doctor to slap somebody, wow.
Yeah.
And once she's taken the test, he takes it too. And I think Zoe says something like, "Well, he's almost as clever as I am."
Yeah.
She does not lack self-confidence.
It takes him 3 tries because he gets things backwards. He multiplies instead of divides, and he's I'm thinking in square roots and all that.
He's stressed out and not doing as well.
But even he is affected by that, where there's a point where he's smiling and, isn't it so wonderful the way the Krotons make us feel? It's like, oh, wait. And he kind of wakes up from it.
Now, do the Krotons recognize the Doctor? Because it seemed to me at one point that they knew him, but then later not.
No,
I don't think so. I think it's just his intellect that intrigues them.
Oh,
well, and they recognize that he wasn't a Gond. I think that's the big thing, that he wasn't a Gond, and he was kind of a leader of their little group. is what it seemed like.
It was kind of the Gone show.
Oh.
Sorry, I just got that pun, and
just to
use it.
Distract from that,
Yes.
there's one moment at which the Krotons have monitors all over the place, and at one point Zoe says, "I have a funny feeling we're being watched," and that comes across as a TV trope. I often talk about tropic dialogue that is lame. This is a chance we've got to take and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I have a funny feeling we're being watched can go in that category because it is overused. But the thing is, it's also true. I'm going to do an episode of Mysterious World about this. There has been research for over 100 years on the sense of being stared at. In fact, some of this early research was done at Stanford University over 100 years ago, where people can tell with better than random chance accuracy if they're being observed. And this has been tested now with, like, you put a person in a room, you put a camera behind them, and sometimes you turn the camera on and they have no way of knowing if the camera's on or off. And then you have another observer in another room watching a monitor. And the person who's being observed can guess with better than random chance if the monitor is on and someone's watching them or not.
I could see evolutionarily that's an important trait.
Yeah,
exactly. And this is unconfirmed, but I've heard it reported that there's actually a sniper field manual in the U.S. military that says do not look at a person too long through the scope before you shoot, because they will turn around and look at you. And so you only want to, when you're ready to shoot, that's when you put the crosshairs on them. You don't do it way before.
Right, that's
like Steve Martin in The Jerk. This guy hates those cans.
He hates these cans.
That is interesting. Speaking of snipers and soldiers, Jamie gets to be, Action Jamie.
Oh yeah,
in episode 1,
right off the bat
into a fist fight.
And he gives him what for. He says he's a Highlander. He knows how to get into a fist fight.
Well, and I like that too, where the guy's got this primitive axe, and they're going to hand one to Jamie. Jamie's like, I don't need it. That proves he doesn't.
Yes. Yeah. No, that was awesome. That was one of my favorite Jamie things. And Jamie just goes to town, and shows them what for. That was really good. The people believe that the outdoor, outside, is a wasteland that is poisonous and deadly, and no one can go out there without dying. And of course, the doctor,
also known as a quarry that the TARDIS lands in.
yes. And the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe prove that it's not. They've walked in from outside and said, "Hey, everybody, what's going on?"
It kind of stinks, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah. This is something we've seen previously, and it comes up occasionally in Doctor Who, but we've seen it previously in The Enemy of the World, where that's the one where Patrick Troughton gets to play both the Second Doctor and Salamander, the World Dictator. And in that, Salamander has a bunch of people holed up underground who think that the surface world has been poisoned by a nuclear war, when really it hasn't. Right. We also see something similar in the Third Doctor's time, where we have a bunch of people who think they're on a spaceship going to a new world, and they're really not. But this keeping people in an environment they don't need, under a false belief where they don't really need to stay in this environment, that comes up periodically.
And the wastelands started because of when the Krotons arrived. They poisoned that area. They spread some sort of chemical or agent of some sort that completely poisoned that area, that if you went into it, you died almost instantly. It's one of those kind of acids or whatever. And so, but the Gons were basically programmed by the Krotons to say, this is still active. You go in there, you will die, horribly.
It's a fairly common trope still. I mean, the two recent shows that use this are Apple TV's The Silo, which is, and the Fallout series on Amazon Prime. I mean, just two more examples of that. And it's an interesting idea. I think it's why it keeps coming. We want to explore this idea of, what if the world isn't the way we think it is? What if an authority is trying to trick us into being obedient?
And of course, Silo takes the opposite approach. Spoiler for if you haven't seen the first season. Yeah. But the outside world is still. Yeah.
That's
it's
true.
been long enough.
Yeah. With actual humans, it doesn't work so well because, I mean, look at what happened with COVID lockdowns. Not everyone went along with that.
Right. Especially the larger the group, the more likely people are to there to be people who will rebel against it. So there is this interesting, rebellion that grows. There's this one fellow named Beta. He's the scientist, and
it's like, why does he rank? Everyone else has a weird name, and he gets a Greek letter. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's like Omega.
I want to meet Alpha.
Yeah. And although he can't be too smart because he didn't get taken to be a companion for the Krotons, but Elek and his gang of rebels, they show up and they're like, all right, make us weapons. And he's like, no, this is stupid. What a bad idea to go to war with the Krotons.
Well, he's even willing to do it, but he says, we're not ready yet. Oh, we're so much more advanced when they came. We've got slings and fireballs. Yeah, that's so much more advanced than bows and arrows.
Yeah, compared to what the weapons the Krotons have. And Elek has... basically, Selrus was the head of the council, and he's been deposed by Elek. And Selrus is trying to convince them, like, let's not run into this willy-nilly. And he says, it is not patriotism to lead people into a war they cannot win. And again, when I think of the context of the Second Doctor when this was being made in the 1960s, this is this peace movement, anti-war. The total war patriotism of World War II is in the past by about 20 years, and now we have the brush wars of the 60s and the opposition, and I could see this mindset coming out here in this. I think a little bit.
Well, here in the United States, this is Vietnam era. This is the beginning of Vietnam, basically, and so we look back on this, and that's just as much an argument against Vietnam as it is any of the other wars that the UK was involved in at the time.
Right. A lot of African wars at the time.
One thing that I thought was, so there were a variety of things that I thought contributed to the mood in this story. One of them is they don't use incidental music the same way they normally do, because the Krotons are this. Now, remember, this is black and white. So that's already can lend a kind of creepy element to it. But then, and they have this bleak landscape, outside the Kroton settlement, outside the Gon settlement. And because of the Krotons and their high tech, we have this kind of medley of background noises that will be, mechanical beeping sounds or buzzing sounds. And it's not instrumental music. It's just this bleak landscape with these weird electronic noises. Also, we have things on screen, like at one point, I think it's Elek. No, it's actually Selrus. Selrus, at one point, towards the climax of the story, he leaps in to bring acid to the Doctor. To use the sulfuric acid to use against the Krotons, and he's killed. And we have, our main leader guy of the local culture killed on screen, screaming to death. And we also have a scene earlier on where Vanna is recovering from having been brain tested by the Krotons, and she's kind of, semi-wakeful, but she's having a PTSD flashback. And she's talking about, because they had this device they used on her, and she's saying, the burning ball, it's over my head. And she becomes hysterical and with these PTSD memories. And it's very effective. It's much, much darker and creepier than what you'd expect from late 1960s children's television.
There were a few funny elements in this one. At one point, Elek is telling Beta that, no, I have been elected as the new leader of the council. The people are behind me. And Beta says to him, Oh, it must be quite a change for you to feel popular. I laughed out loud at that one.
There's also a bit where the doctor is asked for his suspenders to like splint. I think it's Jamie's leg,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't want to give up his suspenders, and it's like, oh, here's my handkerchief. I'd much rather you use that.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a note that says Elex stupidity is proof that the Krotons have been breeding intelligence out of the Gons rather than into them, because he won't wait even a second to attack. Like he has no patience. Let's plan. Let's prepare. Let's gather our forces and be strategic. Nope, it's just attack.
Even that's kind of refreshing, though, because we have these hotheads show up regularly in early Doctor Who stories, and usually their hostility is directed at the Doctor.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they're irrational hotheads who are irrational towards the Doctor. But here it's like, okay, no, we're all on the same side. No one's a Kroton collaborator. All of us are in favor of kicking them out. It's just, do we wait or do we try to do it now and fail?
Yeah. Mm. The suspenders had a bit of visual comedy too, because whoever was I think it was Jamie, was splinting, and grabs the suspender, says, we'll use these, and lets go, and they snap, and the Doctor, you can see him wince in pain when they...
Yes. Yeah.
Also, when you remember the function of suspenders, it would suggest the Doctor does not have a belt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so...
he doesn't.
And so he would need the suspenders to keep his pants up.
Yeah. That's right.
That's the joke about the guy who really wants to make sure his pants stay up uses both a belt and suspenders.
Right. Yeah. He belt and suspenders approach. The Krotons seem to me that they would be pretty easily to defeat in a war, especially given that they need constant direction. If for one instant the controller back in the ship stops directing the one outside where he's going, he's completely lost. Like, he's blind because of I guess daylight is too bright for them, apparently. Yeah. And he's completely blinded.
And they did a good job with the camera where he's like, I can't, direct me. I need direction. And they're swinging the camera back and forth wildly. To make that, to have that effect. And, he's supposed to, trying to find the TARDIS, and you can see the TARDIS flash through the screen back and forth, and you just can't see it.
Right.
That leads to the introduction of a new bit of Doctor Who mythology, because what they want to destroy the TARDIS. And so, once they finally get the direction sorted out and we can see the TARDIS is in the center of its vision, it like fires on the TARDIS. And the TARDIS seems to disintegrate in a puff of smoke. And so this is a dramatic moment for the audience. And Zoe is freaked out by this, because it's like, how we're stuck here now. But the Doctor, here's the new bit of Doctor Who lore. Actually, no, the TARDIS just moved itself. This is part of the HADS, the Hostile Action Displacement System. When the TARDIS senses it's under attack, it's going to move slightly to a safer location. And so it wasn't actually disintegrated. And we've seen the HAD system come back in later Doctor Who stories, including very recently in the Wild Blue Yonder special with the 14th Doctor, David Tennant, where they beam onto that space station at the edge of the universe, and the HAD system activates and the TARDIS displaces itself temporarily.
Right.
Now, I think this had been used before in the second Doctor before this, during when Victoria was a companion. Because the way the Doctor phrased it is where we've seen it's been used before. I thought
this was its introduction, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I for some reason I thought we had seen it before in the second Doctor, but it could be where it was mentioned before, but he had forgot to turn it on or something like that.
Yeah, he does specify in this one that he has to turn it on the first time.
Right.
Let's see. It's known as HADS, simply the displacement system.
Well,
and
like I said, I thought it had been introduced earlier, but
yeah.
Again, I could be wrong too. So
according to this, it's the first. The next time it shows up on screen, there's a lot of audio and prose stuff where books and audio where it shows up. But I don't see the comic books. Kill the Moon, it shows up. So I think it doesn't really show up in Classic Who at all after this. Kind of interesting. Although I would have to look through that more closely, but it looks like it to me.
Yeah, but it's an interesting way of getting us to TARDIS separation.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Even if it's only for like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In this case, in Wild Blue Yonder, it was much longer.
So I mentioned how Elek was willing to turn on the Doctor and Zoe. You know when the Krotons gave him a deal. You know, Elek is slippery like an eel. I suppose that's why he's Elek.
I laughed at Elek where he gives this big lecture about acting stupidly and all this kind of stuff as he's in the process of acting stupidly.
Yeah.
He wasn't the smartest tool in the shed.
No. And in the end, you know, the Gons managed to defeat the Krotons. I mean, the first thing they were going to do was undermine the foundations of the ship, which was not a bad thought. Like, it's, you know, Selrus had seen it, and he had said, let's go down there and dig out the foundations. But the Doctor realizes that, you know, upending the ship could cause serious repercussions, like blow the planet in half. So
yeah. But the Doctor realizes that there's sulfur because, you know, they walk out of the TARDIS into the wastelands and they smell this sulfur, and he finds the actual sulfur ore that he's then able to get Beta to make into sulfuric acid.
And by the way, for folks who may not be sure what sulfur smells like, it's basically rotten eggs.
Yes.
Or gunpowder.
Right.
Yep.
Right. But the Doctor didn't want them, was never intending for the sulfuric acid to be used willy-nilly, right? He wasn't like, we're not going to destroy, you know, kill the Krotons. We're just going to use it to get them to leave. I think because when they started using the acid on the ship itself, he got pretty upset.
Well, no, he didn't. I think he was surprised that they actually figured that out because they had decided to make this large vat of it. And there's a line, I think Beta or somebody said, well, the Doctor obviously thought this could be useful, so let's use it. Right.
But in the end, the Krotons are dead and the Gons are free. And the Doctor and Zoe and Jamie sneak off to back to the TARDIS. They don't want us. The Doctor doesn't want to stick around for the celebration, I guess. Yeah.
He knew that if he stuck around, what would happen is what would happen is that he would be suddenly the scientific advisor to the Gons,
or even their leader, because they've just lost Selrus and Elek, their two other leader guys.
Right.
Now the leaders goes through the family, so it was inherited through the family. So
Thara might then
would take over. Well, and that's kind of one of the last lines is how he's going to take over as the leader and you know lead the Gons to, you know, so now that they're free from the Krotons.
Right. Beta was looking to ask the Doctor for scientific advice and that. So, but Tara's last line is we're going to have to find our own way now, which is a nice way to end it. Any other notes on this one, Father Cory?
So the Krotons had kind of an interesting defensive device, the eye snake, I called it. But it's like basically the dryer vent that comes snaking out of the port there, and it has the disintegrator weapon attached to it, but it goes after the Doctor because, again, they recognize that the Doctor is a threat. So it uses facial recognition. Boy, that's rather fitting for today, to find the Doctor. But the Doctor's able to fool it by just putting his hands in front of his face.
Yeah,
yes.
Not a very good facial recognition.
And the eye snake thing also shows up in Harvest of the Krotons. That's the River Song Jackie Tyler episode. As do a lot of other elements from this. The Krotons are basically running a kind of crystal new age health spa in England. And that's so funny. They have people come in who then you get to go be one of the companions and stuff. And so that shows up there too.
Interesting.
And the one thing we didn't quite make explicit is the reason why the Krotons needed the mental power, those who were the high brain, is because they can transfer that mental power into energy. That's how they get their energy. Right. And that's how when the Doctor and Zoe are are sitting in this nice, comfy looking chairs, their mental power allows the Krotons to form because they're in basically these giant fish tanks,
Vats, yeah.
aquariums that cause them to then crystallize and form.
Yeah, Zoe has a line where she says they seem to have a way of converting mental power to pure energy. And it's like, okay, so they have a transducer. Great. What kind of energy? So, mental power would itself be a kind of energy. I mean, what we really have going on in our brains is electrochemical energy. But then what do you mean pure energy? What type of pure energy? This line is kind of, this is another bit of tropey dialogue where people will talk about pure energy without specifying in TV shows, without specifying what kind of energy they're talking about.
Right. And the Krotons they want to go home, right? They're stuck here. And that's what the thing is. They weren't intending to invade per se. They just kind of came through from where their dimension, say, and ended up stuck on this planet, and having the people of the planet attack them and having to defend themselves. And I mean, so in a way, you could say the Krotons were kind of victims of circumstance in a way, although their subsequent actions were very immoral by objective standards.
Their ship needed 4 brains basically to pilot it. And the 2 Krotons could do it, and then Zoe and the doctor could be the other 2, but the doctor's able to delay until the sulfuric acid that he poured into their fish tank poisons them. Right.
Yeah, you could see that we did skip over the whole part where Jamie was taken captive and had to escape from them, and Jamie being very clever.
There's also some stuff in there about primordial soup on their planet is different than primordial soup on ours, and the doctor gets some of theirs. Yep. So there's some interesting details there. One thing that I thought was interesting, and I've observed it in a lot of episodes, but I was thinking about it in this one, and I've been thinking about it recently. So when the doctor and Zoe, after she takes the brain test, the Krotons know that she's a high brain, and so she is mandated to go into the machine and become a companion. And the doctor won't let her go in by herself. So he takes the test too, so they'll mandate that he come in as well. And this is his way of getting in there to both investigate what's going on and to protect Zoe. And then when they get in there, they're kind of directed to sit on these chairs where they're going to have, further tests run on them and stuff. And the doctor is just like, okay, let's sit down in these chairs because that's what's expected of us. And I noticed the doctor often, this is just an example of it, but I've noticed the doctor often just goes along with stuff, trusting that it's going to work out somehow. When, I would be much less inclined to sit in the chair that makes people get dazed before they're vaporized, and partly, I mean, so thinking about this on a non-diegetic level, the doctor has plot armor, so of course it's going to work out. And after he's 2,000 years old, which he's not at this point, but after he's 2,000 years old in the 12th Doctor's time, okay, you've been bopping around the galaxy for 2,000 years and you've always got out of scrapes with 11 exceptions. So you could have kind of a confidence that things are going to work out. But diegetically, how would you explain that to yourself? I think the doctor must have some sense that he's got some kind of superpower where things just tend to work out for him. And I wonder how that, I think it would be interesting to explore that inside the story and, provide some kind of explanation in the story for how the doctor can just go along with things with reasonable confidence it's going to work out. Like, for example, I just thought of this, but back in the 1980s, 90s, DC had a comic called Blue Devil, which was about a stuntman who had a part where he was playing a Blue Devil in a movie. And so he had this Blue Devil costume on and an accident happened and it fused to him and he became a superhero. But he was just an ordinary stuntman, and nevertheless, weird stuff kept happening to him. that generated the plots for the stories involving the character. And eventually, inside the story, they decided, okay, the character Blue Devil does have a superpower. He's a weirdness magnet. And that's what attracts all the weird stuff to him to generate the stories for the comic series. And I think the Doctor has something like that. Now we've got a partial explanation on why he ends up in weird situations. It's not that he's a weirdness magnet. It's that the TARDIS takes him to these places. But I think they could also explain something about the Doctor, that he's got some kind of it'll all work out almost always principle, that I think he's got some kind of superpower, and he probably knows what it is, but they haven't given us an on-screen explanation of it.
I think the closest they've come to that kind of explanation is just that he's exceedingly clever. That Matt Smith used to always say that he's exceedingly clever. And that's about as close as they've ever come to that. And I mean, maybe that's just a way you could say that he's aware that, just things do seem to work out. Well, of course they work out. I'm so exceedingly clever.
Well, you're right. That is an attempted on-screen explanation, but it doesn't explain it when he just does stuff that's not exceedingly clever. Like, let's sit in this chair that normally dazes you in preparation for vaporizing you. So I'd like that other part of what's happening to be explored on screen.
I have this vague recollection of something in the 13th Doctor's first adventure where she says something along the lines of, whether it's her or somebody else are just lucky all the time. They're lucky beyond the odds of luck, beyond the and something along those lines. I forget what it is, but I'd have to look it up.
You know what would do it is something like the Doctor has a low-level psychic power of a danger sense, where he can sense this is going to be okay, or this is not going to be okay. And so he's able to tell in situations that if he does what he's contemplating doing, it'll end up working out somehow.
So the Doctor is part Kelpian? Oh.
Anything else, Father Cory or Jimmy?
Nope.
Okay. So we do have a little bit of feedback. Nothing too dramatic, but we do have some feedback on our discussion of the Daleks Master Plan, the middle part, the episodes 5, 6, and 8. Jason T. wrote in via YouTube, going to miss Father Cory. We will too, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you.
He says, is it just me, or does having Big Finish stories with Sarah Kingdom make no sense?
Well, no, they have explanations in the Big Finish stories for how that happens. In one of them, I believe it actually occurs. The Big Finish story occurs in the middle of the Daleks Master Plan. In another case, it's not Sarah Kingdom herself, but like her consciousness that's been transferred to a house. And so the house is has Sarah Kingdom and has her voice is narrating the adventure.
Interesting. Then he finishes by saying, and I'm not sure what this is a reference to, but he says, "Wow, I never pegged you as a baby metal fan."
Yeah, that would be referring to me. I must have mentioned Doki Doki Morning. So Baby Metal is a Japanese cute heavy metal band. So it started with like 3 girls who were two of them were in their early teens, which is why it's Baby Metal. And it has this cuteness aesthetic combined with a heavy metal aesthetic. And I'm not normally a heavy metal fan, but I have seen some Baby Metal, and I particularly like their video for Doki Doki Morning. Doki Doki is Japanese onomatopoeia for the sound of a thumping heartbeat, Doki Doki. And so they have this song called Doki Doki Morning, which is about like waking up and being energetic and having an energetic, heart-pounding morning. And if you watch the video for it on YouTube, it's very interesting. It's also even better if you speak a little Japanese, because it combines American and it combines English and Japanese lyrics. So like they're singing Ohio Wake Up. Well, Ohio is good morning in Japanese. So, but then wake up is English. So they're saying good morning, wake up as part of the lyrics and stuff like that. And it's just a fun song and has creative visuals and creative screaming.
It is metal. Then our next one comes from Andrew G, who writes, I do want to see a campaign about Drask. Of course, I'm also pro Lamb Irby, so that's some indication that there's something wrong with me. So I'm not sure what all that is, but... And then Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic on YouTube writes, great episode, especially the discussion of woke at the end. And we actually had a few people who were appreciative of the explanations for what we're talking about when we talk about woke.
I'm glad. I was trying to be as neutral and balanced as I could in explaining the subject.
Yeah. And that's all our feedback. Thank you, everyone, for feedback. We really do appreciate it and love reading it on the show. And now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Christopher K., Lavinia S., Michelle K., Christian B., and Clarice R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 app, a daily companion to help you grow closer to God and to become the man you want to be. This summer, join the Enthronement to the Sacred Heart, the Exodus 90 Summer Book Club, and St. Michael's Lent, beginning August 15th and leading up to the Feast of St. Michael the Archangel on September 29th. Go to exodus90.com/SQPN for a 14-day free trial to the Exodus 90 app and to learn more about St. Michael's Lent. That's exodus90.com/SQPN to join us for St. Michael's Lent starting August 15th. We'd also like to thank Zyman Yannick, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. What did you think of the Krotons? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Send an email to drwho@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can also watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the third Doctor story, Planet of the Daleks. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. Remember, Zoe is something of a genius. Of course, it can be very irritating at times.